You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
Hey there, thanks for joining us today. Paul and I are here, right here. Well, you can't see where we are, but we can. And we are here to talk to Slats, or Ryan Slattery, who is the creator of Betrayed Alliance, as well as the author of Betrayed Alliance, Book 1, which is a whole player's guide and manual for the game. And now the cool thing is this game was made in the style of Text-Parser. And so I thought, what better way to have a conversation here, what better way than to bring all of my favorite people here together to talk about point and click and text parsers and further our conversation about it. So, hey, Ryan, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure.
Did she say your last name wrong? Is it Slattery or Slatterly?
Oh,
it is Slattery. Slattery all the time, but Slattery is correct. That's why just call me Slat. Easiest way to go.
Slats, super easy. All right, I can do that. I'm not good with names. Just ask the few people that have emailed in to say, wow, I've never heard anybody make fun of my name that way. Thank you, friend. I didn't mean to make fun of your name, and I really do appreciate you as being a listener. I won't do it again.
No worries at all, Anna Vique.
I like that one. There's a few versions. No, that's fine too. I'll take it. I got Vigu, but no,
that's
Vigu.
that Canadian politeness though, because it is not how you say it. And she's like, no, it's fine. Oh, I don't know why I made her Irish for a second there. But like,
no, it's fine. Yes. So yeah, this is how it starts. And okay, so we've talked about this subject before a little bit, but we've never actually talked about this subject with somebody who has gone out there and made a game that is a text parser game to discuss it. Because here we are, Paul's making a point and click game, The Phantom Fellows, and I think it's a great mode of transportation to adventure into a game. But at the same time, my nostalgia for text parser goes back far because it's what I started with and it's what I played all my favorite games on. And when we switched to point and click, I was mad. I was like, I remember the tirade. I went to my dad and I said, why are they making these games for stupid people now? Sorry, no offense. But that's what I said. I'm like, it's like they were tricky and difficult and intricate, and now they're dumbed down and anybody can play them. And I proved it by finishing all the point and click ones without using any kind of a hint book, and way faster than I finished any of the parser ones. And at the time, it was just for me to say, look, point and clicks are stupid. It's for little kids. Now, of course, being that I was about 12 or 13 when I had that opinion, I've probably mellowed out a little bit by now. But when I put myself back into those shoes again, I can kind of see where I'm coming from. And here you are, Slats, and you're a grown-up, and you're making games in the style that I loved playing them. And I'd love to hear why you chose to do that.
Yeah, well, I definitely have a similar feeling that you do about the games, about point and click, but not nearly as harsh. I didn't feel like they were dumbed down necessarily, but I did feel like I was constrained, like I was put on like a railroad track where like every possible place was kind of planned out for me to go. Just you click on this, you have to do this. And the spontaneity of like typing in and discovering things to do was gone. And it just felt like the adventure or the discovery of it all was taken away from me. So I really did drop out of playing adventure games for a long time from the move from type parser to point and click.
that's interesting. And I know you're saying stupid because you played Larry 5 first, though, right? Because that one is the standout. Like that game is very pandering. It's very like overly simple. Like it teaches you like the mechanics of pointing and clicking. Like, geez Louise, it's in the name. Like I get it. It really beats you over like the head with it. But I think that would be the only example of that, and that happened to be your first one, right? So that all checks out. But Ryan, you said that you kind of stopped adventure games from the point and click. So it was a bit of a deal breaker, in other words.
It was for me, for sure.
Right.
I gave a few of them a good old college try, especially Quest for Glory 3, because Quest for Glory was like my favorite series. But I don't know. I just assumed 3 was a bad game because I wasn't enjoying myself. And then I think I ended up playing The Longest Journey at some point. I saw it at the game store and I thought, ooh, an adventure game. And I bought it, and I started playing it. I did not get very far at all before I thought, no, it's just not for me. It's just not the way I like to play these type of games. And I'd go back and I'd play Space Quest 3 and King's Quest 4 because those were the games that I enjoyed. I just enjoyed typing. I don't know why. I think I like the graphics too, to be honest. It was the old school graphics and the type parser.
Trying to decide between two directions to go with this right now. Okay, maybe who knows? Maybe I'll remember the other one when I choose this one. But I'm curious how you feel about the state of modern adventure games right now, considering they've only gotten, in my opinion, I'm not even sure if it's my opinion. I think it's just like an objective truth, but they've gotten a lot more railroad and a lot easier, a lot more. Here's the thing you want, and like I guess with the highlights and things like this. Like I mean, granted they were around back in the day to a degree with Monkey Island and such, but I guess overall I'm just curious. Do you get enjoyment out of modern point and clicks?
I think probably more enjoyment from modern ones than older ones, mostly because I think the 2-click point and click is better than like wheeling through or right clicking through different icons. Like I really didn't like doing that. It felt so fiddly, and I didn't enjoy it. So I haven't played a whole lot of modern ones because it just doesn't appeal to me anymore. But I have played a few, and strangely enough, even though I really enjoy the openness and the infinite options of something like a parser system, when it comes to point and click, I want it as dumbed down as possible,
Right.
because it's just less fiddling around.
Right. That was unexpected. I guess I could say I was not expecting to say, well, I would take the 2-click over, because I painfully agree with you in the sense that while my own game is going in the Sierra style, so it has that clunky right click cycle through. I also don't like the right click clunky cycle through. So I'm pushing the players really, really hard. Really just I could probably even use a little more finesse in as far as how my tutorial is laid out. But I'm like, look, listen, use the goddamn number, use the keypad, please. Like you will get so much more enjoyment out of my game if you use the keypad, because it's like, well, you only walk left to right. So there's the argument for the arrows. There's no awkward, like, Sierra staircase arrowing where it's like up, left, up, to get diagonal. So
Right.
you're just going left to right in this game. And then 1, 2, 3 is LIT 1, 2, 3, look, interact, touch. And I'm trying to get the players to, and almost nobody is, by the way, based on the beta
including
testing.
me very stubbornly.
Right, exactly. Including Anna, including like all the beta testers, almost nobody's using the keyboard.
Myself as well, and I'm sorry about that. I like what you're doing with the LIT 1, 2, 3. That's great, super clever. But man, I don't know.
Right. It's just like, it's like an old app in our brains that just turns on. Like, I get it. I didn't expect it to be such a hard roadblock, but it really, and it's fair enough because we grew up on these games. But anyway, my point is that even though I went with the point and click option, okay, I guess I should try and finesse this down a little bit more to say that the reason I went with the Sierra was because I wanted more than 2 clicks. I wanted the player to have the agency to say, if I'm going to click on this NPC, I want to decide if I'm talking to them, inappropriately touching them, or looking at them. And obviously, like in a comedy, I do want as many options as possible, because just right then and there, like having a ghost that can touch a girl he shouldn't, and a guy, there's all just funny lines there. I got dangerously close to an edit, but we're good. But yeah, there's a lot of room for comedy there, so I didn't want to skip out on that. In other words, I could forgive other genres of point and click, like more serious. I'm thinking like Techno Babylon, like things there. It might just be appropriate enough to just let the game decide what happens when you click on them. But that old school parser fan, and our listeners know that, and Ryan, I know you listen, so I probably don't even need to say this, but I did grow up on parsers. I do love the parser games. Like all my favorite games came from SCI 0, which I have questions to you about. We'll get to later. But the point I'm sloppily trying to make here is just that in choosing point and click, I wanted as much agency as possible, influence from parser, and the only way to really do that was with the clunky Sierra option, as opposed to point. Yeah.
Right.
Phew. It was exhausting. I need a sip of water.
It's kind of like that, actually. And I think, if you get a whole bunch of us adventure gamers in a room together, I'd be curious to see how the debate would be divided. Like on a large scale, I really do wonder, because I know a lot of the games that have been out there for parser have been successful. And of course, you have Phil Fortier. He's done really well with the snail Trek series, and that's all done by parser too. But I guess he did a few differences, right? He modernized it a little bit, as in it would kind of finish what you were writing, and it would kind of like try to guess what you were trying to do. So it was a little bit less. It was like almost like a middle ground, like a little bit easier than your typical parser, a little bit more difficult than your typical point and click. What do you think of that, guys?
Yeah, it's got the autocomplete, which I thought was really cool. When I was playing the Snell Trek game last I played it, I don't remember. Does it give you like noun options for all of the? Are the noun options it gives you things that are within the game, or does it just kind of start to autocomplete spell any noun that you're writing? Because I feel like if it's only giving you the options of things in the game, then it becomes a little bit too streamlined for my taste.
I felt it was quite streamlined. It made it a lot easier. It was just telling you essentially within the options that you could choose from.
Streamlined to like the point of redundancy.
Well,
to the point where it kind of removes the discovery of it all. Like I don't mind if I get not an error message, but like, oh well, the character doesn't know anything about what you're asking about. I don't mind getting that every once in a while. If I get to ask questions about like, oh well, what do you think about this mysterious cave? Even if they don't know anything about it, it's like, oh, I still got to ask.
Right.
It definitely makes you keep track of the names better and pay attention to the storyline, because when I'm playing your game, Slats, I'm writing down anytime somebody gives me information that has a name in it or something to follow up, and I'm putting in a list. It's like I used to do as a kid, and then I'm going around and I'm asking every single person in the game about those people and about those things to find out where the information comes from. And I think, to me, in a point and click, it is a little bit like you don't have to put the effort in. You're just like, oh yeah, now I've learned a name. I can go clicking on everybody else to see if it brings up a new dialogue option. So totally different neural pathways you're hitting there.
Right.
Well, that could tie into one of our shared notes topics here, which is room for narrative. And I kind of posed this question to us where it's like, could it be argued that there's better narrative delivery in point and click, or that there's more room for it? Because the parser does kind of burn up resources just getting to the information sometimes. And I don't really have a firm stance on this, just in a genuine explore the idea sense of conversation. But I'm almost wondering if point and click, maybe one of the plus sides to the passenger aspect of it, the plus side to some of the worst aspects of it would be that there is more room for narrative delivery. Is that true, or is it just that most parser games were older and had less narrative?
Ooh, that's
interesting
question.
Because it's kind of like what I was saying with, I felt like I was being on rails. Well, it's easier to tell a story if you are on a track that goes from point A to point B. Whereas if you're like in a parser where it's like it's an open field, well, it does feel like a little bit harder to tell a narrative story. For instance, I have a character in my game where he'll give you important information about an enemy kind of puzzle situation. But if you don't ask him about that, you'll never know about it. And so then you can go up and do the puzzle, and maybe you don't know why it played out the way it did because you didn't kind of go down that path. But if it was point and click, you go up to talk to the character, it give you a list of a few items to talk about, you get all the information, you be on your merry way with all the information.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely, narratively speaking, you'll definitely get the information you need from point and click, as long as you just don't skip the dialogue completely because you just don't want to.
Right. Which is a huge problem. Yeah. Sorry.
But with the parser, that's what I like about the parser, especially when you're talking to characters, is you're playing a mini game with the character where you talk to them, you try and figure out, okay, what keywords are important, and then you follow up on those, and then you go down multiple different rabbit holes if you want to. So I actually enjoy that because it puts you in an active role instead of being kind of listed out what you need to talk about, which is like, okay, well, I'm gonna just click through these and there's the information.
Right.
Now, what about okay, so some games have combined parser and point and click, whether to their success or not. You can take a game like Leisure Suit Larry 7 or Starship Titanic, as Paul's heard me brought up lots of times. and another game which I haven't played yet, but I'm super curious about, called Event Zero, which is an indie game that came out a few years ago. And you actually text input with a computer in the game to try to resolve your issues and make your way home. But it's all through, texting back and forth with the unit that's in there. But anyways, now I found when I played games where it mixed the two together, because it's easier and because human beings do like easier, I do default to the point and click, even though I say I love the parser and I love the combination so much. So like with Larry 7, I played the whole game point and click and used the parser for the novelty. And I chose not to play it that way. So I wonder how many people actually want what they say they want.
Well, I know for me, if there's a parser option, I'm taking it because I really, anytime a parser game comes out, like Signal and Echo, the demo for that is like, oh, I got to play that, and I loved playing it. I got out a notebook and was writing down stuff.
Yeah.
And when Julia Minamata's game comes out, the Crimson Diamond, that's like the top of my list. Parser, we don't get fed that often, so I get really excited. Even Cosmic Void's smaller parser games, they're like 2 or 3 rooms, but I really enjoy just the opportunity. I feel like, point and click, you have your variety of options. It's like you can just, you have a game to play every week and it's, no big deal. But if I have an option for a parser game, I'm going to take it because it's few and far between.
Right. That's fair.
A niche within a niche. Within a niche, actually. You're a few niches deep when you get here.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm thinking in my head of the divide between the classic divide of like Sierra and LucasArts players, and it is interesting that because Ryan, you brought up like the interactivity of parsers, like how much more interactive it is, and so it's like maybe at the cost of some arguably superfluous narrative, but at the cost of narrative regardless, there's a lot of interactivity, a lot of like hands-on. And then that made me think how a lot of the LucasArts players, they don't want to save and restore a game. Like that's a deal breaker. Like that's how uninteractive to a degree I think they kind of want it. And when I say that does spill into a lot of modern point and clicks, because point and click is definitely heading away from interactivity in a to a degree that almost frightens me, where it's like it starts to beg questions of like, is this, it's getting pretty like movie like, or like a picture book like, to a degree, where it's just like, here's the thing in the room that you're going to want to click on, and removing some of that like mystery from it. And I'm just, I guess, because another point we have on this list here is, actually, did I write this one on the list? Well, either way, I was posing the question again. Is there an argument to be made that parser adventures are a different genre than point and click adventures?
And that was my question. Yeah, I brought that up because I was like, some people like, and I think actually I got this idea from one of the comments on your article about parser versus point and click, and the message said, I don't even think that it's the same. I think it's like comparing 2 completely different genres together. Like, but I guess it's like a genre within a genre, but I still consider, I mean, what you've done, Slats, and what you're doing, Paul, as both being adventure games. I don't feel they're different genres, but at the same time, if you're saying that, you only want to play games that are parser regardless of what genre they're in, that kind of does separate it out a little bit.
Right. And that works the other way as well. I think anybody that grew up on the LucasArts games, like a lot of European adventure fans and such, like they don't want to touch parsers. It definitely. So there's a weird divide, I guess, regardless.
Yeah, they're definitely like distant cousins, and hopefully they're not married. But if they are, they're producing some strange children. That's for sure.
Yeah, it almost makes me think of like ice hockey and roller hockey, or something to that degree. I'm not trying to pander to our Canadian co-host here. Just growing up playing them, and I was a goalie, and half the fun of being a goalie in ice hockey is sliding around. So like when you get on roller courts and you just like stick to it, it's like this isn't fun at all. But it's essentially the same game, but it's not. So
That's a really good simile, actually.
For all the Canadians that listening, that will get that, and nobody else. Okay, so I kind of want to go into Betrayed Alliance a little bit here, because I finally got to play it for the first time.
Yeah, we both played it and enjoyed the hell out of it. And okay, before you jumped in, Paul was a little bit nervous because he's not really a Quest for Glory guy. So I'm describing it and I'm like, it's kind of like Quest for Glory, but it doesn't have like all of the, in-depth attributes. So it's kind of like Quest for Glory light. And I think that calmed him down. And so I was nervous to hear what he'd say about it. But then I'm talking to him after he plays it and he's just like, oh my God, Anna, that game was amazing. So now you can go ahead and say your thing. I just wanted to say you were concerned, and the game actually smoothed that concern right out.
I was, and it's so unfair of me, frankly, because I still haven't given Quest for Glory a proper chance. So it's not even like I played those and didn't like them. I'm just this weirder version to. I don't know. Yeah, I feel gatekept by Quest for Glory. I'm not sure why. I think I've done it to myself. But anyway, no, dude, I had so much fun playing your game. I was almost, I think, relieved at how much I liked your game. I'm like, well, thank God I don't have to fake it tomorrow. Jesus Christ, this is nice.
That is good to hear. That's good to hear from my side too.
Man, it was so fun. I sold myself out there by saying tomorrow because yes, I did play it all last night. That is, I still haven't grown up in many aspects, and that is unfortunately one of them. Homework the night before. But
dude, not me, of course. No,
I cleared my schedule to do it last night and then this morning, and I actually kept me and my kid up like into 2 a.m. last night just playing it because I just didn't want to stop, and he took advantage of me, he's like hiding in the bathroom pretending to brush his teeth for 3 hours because Dad's.
Yeah, well, it really is like you can tell when you're playing the game that I was, mostly inspired by Quest for Glory, but it definitely doesn't rely as much on the combat or the stats, and there's multiple reasons for that. So it really does play out more like a traditional, almost like a King's Quest game, where you have kind of an open-ish world, and you can kind of explore around, and then eventually you'll kind of find your way through the places you have to go. But in terms of the stats, like it's not a really big a part of the game because mostly having like a stat based game is a really ambitious thing. And the game was ambitious, but this is, I ended up calling it book one and, ending it because I thought, well, I'm tired of this. I'm done with the game. I'm putting it out as book one and I'll never come back and work on it again. And then, 6 years after I did that, I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I came back and worked on this some more.
You just needed that time and separation away from it, so you forgot how you felt and remembered the good stuff. That's distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was never intended to be, divided into 3 parts. So the combat feels tacked on because it really is. It's not a huge part of the game at all.
Mm-hmm. And that was a pleasant surprise, but I'm also not like vehemently against like combat in adventure games. Like again, we're all coming from more like the Sierra camp of things, so we're used to what others would call bullshit mini games and stuff like that.
Right.
But, where I admire them greatly, and I do want to get into Sailboat Extreme. I just panicked there because my auto check in my notes changed it to Mailbox Extreme. I'm like, surely that was a boat.
Oh man, that's got to be the next one. That's a great title too.
But yeah, sorry. So I wasn't too afraid of it. But what I would say is I fought one time in my playthrough, and maybe for anybody else who isn't into that or isn't a Quest for Glory person, like there's no part of your game made me. I got everything it was saying. All the in-jokes I would say were more just Sierra than Quest for Glory. Like there's probably 1 or 2 things I didn't get, but I didn't like painfully miss it. It was just in passing. I'm just like, okay. I took it all in. I never felt like I was missing a joke, let's say, in a good way. I only had to fight once. I accidentally won, which was awesome. I did completely panic and start mashing stuff. Like the last strike, thank you. The last strike I made was the one where I realized that what the up arrow is doing, which I thought was a very fun mechanic to kind of wind the sword. And anyways, for anybody listening, you don't have to fight. I fought the one time and then I did run. Mm-hmm. that was me. Yeah. What do you call it?
You honorably ran for your life. Yes.
Yes, I honorably ran for my life. I was censoring myself for making a French joke. There, I said it. I'm sorry, French listeners. But I ran, and and I would almost equate it more to. I know maybe this is kind of wildly left field, but to me, like the super loose takeaway was like Indiana Jones, where it's just like, yeah, every now and then, like you throw some fists around. Like it was kind of fun. Like there was, it was done almost exactly like Indiana Jones, where it's just like, you can stop and fight if you want to. You can usually get away from it if you don't. But yeah, anyway, I had a really, really good time playing it. And I would say, like, the thing I ran into Anna with in Messenger was like, for me, like your game and Enclosure are two games that I would totally believe was like a long lost Sierra title. Like
Yeah.
they just well, I guess let me back up a step. Have you played Enclosure? I'm guessing you have, Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Because you're playing all the available parsers, and like you said, there's not a lot of them.
Right. Yeah.
Enclosure to me just felt like a long lost AGI game. I would say Enclosure feels like maybe it was like more left in beta than actually like lost, whereas yours feels really, really polished and finished, and like just this long lost SCI 0 game. And sorry, I'm talking a lot, but now I'm curious too. Was this an SCI 0?
Yeah, this is it's a true SCI 0 game. It's built within that very program or that very engine. So yeah, it runs in SCIV, and it uses AdLib, and MT32 is an available option. Like, we've really gone and tried to make it work with all the stats. Like, old hardware runs it and plays it. So we tried to really make that possible. It runs a little slow on some of the older hardware because I don't own any older hardware, so it's hard for me to optimize for it because I don't know what I'm dealing with.
Right.
But it runs.
Yeah, so cool. It was so I wasn't sure if it was like actually SCI 0, like if SCI 1 even abandoned parser, and that's a whole probably nerdier deep dive for either another time or in 5 minutes. But there was something so cool about I used SCIV as the launch command in DOSBox last night, and it's just filled with just admiration that this whole thing is just running. Yeah, it's running in DOS, and that you could go play it in like a 486, and
Right.
pulled up my little Munt MT32 emulator on the computer to emulate the MT32 in the background, and hearing the unbelievable soundtrack. Who did the soundtrack?
Oh, Brandon Bloom did the soundtrack for this one, and it's kind of a mix because I had done a lot of the music myself, but he reorchestrated them and made them available on MT32, and it just sounds so good. And then he has some original tracks in there as well, so it's kind of a Frankenstein's monster, but like a beautiful one.
Right. Okay. So you did do quite a bit of it, and then interesting. Okay, that's very cool. It was
I like the Henry the Hermit song, of course, Henry the Hermit, because I'm a fan of the first game, and I like the nod in there, and I like the nod with the magic ladder too. But the music, the rewrite on that, the tune was nice. It's just such a nice, fun, bassy, chill tune.
Yeah, thank you.
For me, my favorite was it plays like in the upstairs of the tavern. I think it also plays in the library. I'm not sure, but it's like it sounds like a lute with like a fretless bass.
Oh,
And
that one was definitely one that Brandon did. That's an original one to him. And the cool thing is we have 4 different like buildings that you can go inside, and he reorchestrated that tune with a different kind of instrument palette for each room.
That's
so
why.
it sounds slightly different, and it's great.
Yeah, no, the soundtrack was awesome. There's the whole the authenticity. There we go of the entire thing was part of the charm, but it doesn't like lean on that whatsoever. Like it really, it was shockingly funny, and I say that just because I didn't expect it. I wasn't expecting comedy out of it. Let's say, but there's just like, and it's like obviously written by somebody who grew up with Sierra, right? Because it's very in the vein of like the Sierra types of comedy.
Right.
Unfortunately, I wrote down maybe too many notes because I'm just seeing like a blob of things. Let me try and pick one out. Right. Okay. Got one right here. This one there's like, I had 2 really big laughs. What was the other one? Well, this one was, I just really appreciated the idiot and then sound stupid. I love a good Dostoevsky reference. That was really well done in the library. I think it was just the shock to see like a Dostoevsky reference in an adventure game and that it was made funny. Like idiots sound stupid. That was so good. Deborah yelling, that made me laugh out loud too. And she because I don't know, it has like just this charming, sweet little Sierra game vibe. And then this lady's just like, you bastard, jerk, yelling at you out the window. You're like, what the fuck? I just walked in the screen. What did I do? And then you get to uncover the actual back history and find it out, that he was the
general
sergeant,
responsible, or the sergeant, was it, that was responsible for the death? Yeah.
Right. You're just the general. You might not have been, in command of his particular unit or whatever, but you're the top dog, so you're the blame. So
Right. Right.
I like how afterwards she's like, I don't know, the fact that she was even willing to forgive on the level she was with how it got resolved was very satisfying too, because she's having to eat it a little bit too. You're both having to eat it a little bit, but you want the chicken.
yeah.
See, that was a part in the hint book that made me laugh, because you're like, wow, a chicken breast.
I love this book, man. This book is great because I played through it first, and then I played through it using the book on here, and I love how you've set it up in classic style. I love how I was able to just turn the page through to the pictures that I like. The whole flipping it upside down to see the answer, because of course I grew up with the red cellophane hint books or UHS hints, and I'm a huge fan of not giving it all away. I don't want to always know what to do. I kind of want to get what I could be doing to figure it out. So the setup of your book was exactly what I wanted.
Well, thank you. I really thought having a hint guide where it had hints before it gave you the walkthrough would be really kind of nice. I thought it'd be especially useful if somebody was streaming the game. And it's like, well, they don't necessarily want to consult a walkthrough, but maybe, because they don't want to just sit at the same puzzle for 10 minutes because that's not engaging. So I thought, well, maybe just having like a series of hints could help people who are streaming, get past the game, but also have an authentic experience with the game without having to just, we'll just use a walkthrough and just, mow it through.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many nice touches too. Like, even though you were kind enough to send me an official strategy guide, I'm the kind of nerd that has to have that nice and on my shelf and on display. So I used the PDF instead because I didn't want to mess the book up. And it was just little things to me strike me as just entirely brilliant. Like I'm not, I'm not overstating that. Like it was brilliant to me that you just simply. I want to say made it transparent, but you just grayed out the hard answer. So and sorry for listeners. So it's like he gives you 3 hints, and then if that's still not doing it for you, or if you're trying to stream or whatever, you just want to actually get through it, which I wouldn't encourage people to do. You should take your time with it. But if that was the case, then it has like more of the hard solution, and it's in just a very light gray font, and it's like it isn't hard to see, but it is easy to avoid. It was just, it's such a nice touch. Like it was so well thought, such an elegant solution. There we go. That's the phrase.
I wanted to avoid accidentally spoiling. If people are just kind of going through it, they could accidentally, because your eyes are just going to read stuff if it's there.
Right.
Because that's Paul's done the same he's done a version of how to get through the game in his game that's a little bit different because the hint system is essentially tied into the game through the characters. So it's through dialogue that you figure out the hints with one of the characters, but at the same time it's gradual. Hey, I don't know what to do now. Can you give me an idea? Now it's like, oh, but I'm not really sure about this detail. And then the next time he's like, okay, fine. What is it I need to do? But it's like, it doesn't give it all to you.
That too. I definitely used that when I was playing the demo a few times because I am, believe it or not, I'm just really, really bad at adventure games. And like, I
think a lot of us
the only reason I ever beat, Space Quest 3 or any of those games was because it was like me and my 2 brothers and my sister kind of all working together. And I was just kind of like observing and like, oh, that's how you do it. Great. Now I can do that on my side.
Right, and then just run through it again, like actually enjoying it, because it's a little stressful when you don't know what to do. Yeah. But like honestly, you kind of alluded to, you need a sidekick for that type of like implication.
Yeah.
Some sort of like to make it feel natural or whatever. But I don't know. I'm tempted to go through some of my notes here just because of in reverse positions, like I would want to be told like all the glowing things I loved about, somebody played my game. I'd be like, I want to hear everything that you loved, go. But I also don't want to just like, name like this like best of greatest hits thing. And because I really do want anybody listening to go check it out. It's free, for the love of God.
The puzzles make sense, man. And the clues are all right there within everything you have to read. And it's like super logical. Like I did not find the most moon logic, the most difficult thing in your whole game for me was figuring out to ask the fisherman about his hair.
Right. Yeah.
That's right at the beginning. No, I couldn't figure that one out. I got it though. Right. He does have crazy hair.
Yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't be easy to do just kind of out of nowhere. There is another, there's a hint that you could get that would kind of point you in that direction. But yeah, without that, it's like I'm never going to ask that guy, "Hey, nice hair." I'm going to ask you about your hair.
All right, yeah, I do want to just run through some. Sorry, I'm wrestling with myself here, but I just want to go through some because they were fun. Anybody listening, if you don't want to hear any spoilers, just skip ahead. Generic amount of seconds. I don't know.
5 minutes ahead.
Yeah, exactly. The mirror bit was an awesome way to start the game. That was a very, very cool mechanic. Where you just, because you walk by it a few times and see yourself, and me just like nerd programmer wise, I'm like, oh, very cool. That must have been a pain in the ass to get that mirror working. I have like a plugin for AGS to do mirrors, and even that's difficult. And most of the work was done for me in a plugin. Like I just have to kind of like do that final little bit of shaping it to get it to work on my end. I couldn't imagine from scratch in SCI. It's also a nerd part of me wants to know how exactly you did the glow around the character, like down in the caves. Kind of has that Rosella in the Chasm sort of vibe where and it follows the player around and lights the room. And I was trying to imagine like how you might do that. Like, is the character actually? I think I do just want to formally ask you how did you do that? Is the character sprite just a giant room-sized sprite with the black thing all around it? That's what I concluded last night. That's my stab
So
at it.
in the crypt, I think I have 4 fairly large kind of black boxes that kind of follow you. Like if your X, variable is so far, it'll kind of follow your X,
Interesting.
and Y variables up and down. And then there'll be the one black box around you with kind of the light transparency, and that kind of will fit into those boxes below and to the left and to the right of you. And it works really well, but the bad part is it's really kind of stressful on the older computers. So the frame rates drop really bad on older computers. So if I ever optimize it, I'm going to have to come up with a more clever way to do those rooms.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so they're just following the character. So
Yep.
does SCI have like an AGS? It would be repeatedly execute. Is that something in SCI that sounds familiar? Where it's just run this
Yep, there's a do
nonstop?
it method that runs every cycle, which
There you
is
go.
like I don't know, like one every 10 seconds or whatever. And you put code in there, and it'll continually update the room based upon whatever stats are going on in that room. So that's exactly how it is run.
Right. Okay. And that's why it's resource heavy too. That makes sense. So what
Mhm.
about the other question? Sorry, everybody listening, it's not into super nerd stuff. I'll try and move us past this quickly, but I just had to satisfy a few curiosities. The other one is, first of all, as soon as I saw the first, I think it was the winding cliff where you use the marble to move the stone. But it's my first opportunity to see if I could walk off something and die. I took that shit. I was like, yeah,
Oh yeah.
let's see if he falls and dies, and he did, and it was so satisfying. Like just that and the grave robbing. I'm like, this takes me back. I remember being an SCI 0 just digging up somebody's grave. It was such an awesome feeling to do that again. But I'm curious how you handle the autosaves. Is that a repeatedly execute a do always situation as well? Like how'd you program that?
So it's actually kind of remarkably easy. It's just at the beginning of every room, I'll just have the game save with the title of autosave in the slot number 1 or whatever, and it's that easy. So
That's it. Okay.
it's just part of every startup screen. Although there are a few, like I didn't want people to autosave at the beginning of a battle because I didn't want them to get in a place where like they're going to get killed like repeatedly in this battle.
Right.
So it doesn't autosave on battles, and like any other screen where it would be kind of not a good place to autosave, like in the introduction sequence. You want to load into the intro
I
where the
can
ending
see that.
sequence is.
It's like, okay, when I was in the last cavern and I went back into the room that had a switch you had to trigger and you can fall off the cliff, now it makes sense to me because it auto saved when I came into the room, but I had my cursor, my walk speed all the way up, like really fast at the time. And so
Right.
as soon as I would retry because he was falling off the cliff, it would put me so close to the cliff because the cliff edge was like a few inches off that he'd just keep wanting to fall off the cliff over and over, which I mean, I was able to stop him from going in that direction and take him back upwards. But I was wondering how the choice was made of where the autosaves were, and now it makes sense.
What about for taking objects? So would you do an autosave that like after they took something? Because I don't remember ever having to retake something after I died.
No, I only do it at the beginning of the screen. So I'm not,
Okay.
I could do that, but at that point, I don't want to, I mean, that an autosave is already kind of hand-holdy, and this is supposed to be a Sierra game, so I don't want to go that far.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is why I give the player has the option to turn off the autosave, if they want the
Right.
more quote unquote authentic experience.
And I
where
like
it's
how you
save
said
early,
it.
save often, and do it yourself.
Right.
No, I like how you set it up with you can try it again, you can restore your game, or you can, go on out and get the hint book, which is super reasonable. And I really like that kind of a little marketing tactic, because it takes me back to Sierra days. They used to do stuff like that all the time, and it is so authentic. It just felt good to see it. And plus the fact that I have the player's guide right here made it even better, because I'm like, yes, I sure will. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It was trippy just seeing an Amazon link in that font in SCI 0 in DOSBox.
Yeah. Go to Amazon.com. It's like, what?
Right. It's like alternate timeline kind of vibe. Like, whoa, imagine in a world. Okay,
so you go ahead.
That's
You have
about the
another
closest I'm going to get to in-app purchases, is just kind of telling you, hey, there's a thing you can buy. That's about. I'm not going to, hey, if you want to download some more content, just slip me a $5. Like,
I want the marble. I want the extra marble DLC.
There was another good line with Pluto. I really liked that.
Yeah, me too.
Don't you sass me. It was a planet back then.
No, that's good. And I mean, okay, well, talking about Parser, unless you have another super nerdy question on that side, let's talk about the ability to find Easter eggs, unexpected responses, interact with the environment. Is that easier or better or different with Parser comparing it to with point and click? Is there too much in the hands of the imagination for a person to be able to figure out what to do with the parser? Is it too easy with the point and click? And how does that affect if somebody wants to play a game again?
I feel like sometimes it can be too easy with the point and click. And I was thinking about this because point and clicks often got into a situation where it's like, I don't know what to do. So then you just go to your inventory, you click everything on every hotspot. And then sometimes you'll accidentally solve a puzzle. And sometimes it'll make sense, but sometimes it'll be like, well, why does throwing a pie at the Yeti work exactly? Why does throwing this cheese in the cauldron? You're just clicking stuff on stuff for no rhyme or reason. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I feel like that's kind of the point and click struggle, is that feeling. Whereas in the parser, it's like the parser's not understanding me, and that's the difficulty. And I think I'd take the parser difficulty over there's clicking stuff on stuff. Oh, it makes it too easy. I think that's what I was saying.
It really does. I mean, that's how I did it. That was my hack. That's why no adventure game was tricky for me as a kid. You have two things. You click absolutely every square inch of the screen. There was no hotspots, right? You're like playing Space Quest, right? So you click every square inch of the screen in every direction, and then you click every inventory item on another inventory item, and then you click every inventory item on every spot on the screen. And outside of missing a dialogue option, there really was nothing else they could do to hold you back from finishing a game. And in Parser, it's like, what about a game that doesn't let you say something like ask about? A lot of the old games didn't allow you to say ask about the car. So now you've got like this whole lateral thinking. And the reason I bring it up this way is because my dad yesterday approached me and said, hey, I think I'd like to talk to you a little bit about memory and developing new brain cells. And I'm like, interesting, do tell. And he said, if I ask you a question and you have a really great memory and you know where everything is, you don't have to search for that memory. You just tell me this is what it is and the answer's done. You haven't activated anything in your brain other than, okay, now I remember a thing. But if you have a bad memory, you have to figure out what it was you said and what they were talking about. And neurologically, like, you have to light up all these different regions of your brain to put the pathways together to figure out where the memory is, to put it into context, to bring it back to the other person. And where this becomes helpful and maybe even connected to what we're talking about is later on when you get more forgetful, or maybe you have dementia, people that are used to always having the information right on the tip of their tongue have a really hard time with memory problems because they're not used to having to look for it. But people that have spent their whole lives kind of going, I don't know, let me think about it, let me figure it out, they've got all these bigger neural pathways that can help them cope with the loss of memory. And in a way, it's kind of like parser versus point and click. In point and click, you can kind of pick the thing and do the thing, but you're not necessarily activating all the neural pathways that gets you to realize how to phrase it and have the conversation.
Yeah, that checks out. Right. And it ties in what Ryan, you were just saying about stumbling upon the answer accidentally, where it's like, I was just, almost like routinely or habitually just combining things, and that takes work. I mean, there is a version of that in parser where you're using words on words, let's say, as opposed to like
Right.
an item on an item. But it's so much more laborious that it's just it feels less common. Like you're not really going to put up with that. And I guess I could maybe transition us into the one of the questions that we have here for ourselves, which is puzzle design differences. And this was an area that Anna really just completely missed the last few times that this subject has come up, comparing the two.
I sure did.
So yeah, I guess I don't know. I'll put it to you, Ryan, just to without. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't thought of an answer yet. So while I'm struggling for one, do you have an answer? Or how do you think puzzle design is different?
I don't know that there is necessarily a big difference. Like, you have bad puzzles in both genres or both like styles, and I don't think parser will make a bad puzzle design good, and I don't think point and click makes good puzzle design bad. Like, I think it's all really even across the board. It's just when you're doing point and click, you click the item on the hotspot or whatever. Whereas in the parser, you do have to be a little bit more precise. Like, you have to know what you're doing usually, because you're usually not going to be typing, specific command to use an item in a certain way in a certain spot unless you have a good reason for doing it. Whereas in point and click, you're just, well, I'm going to click this hotspot on this one and see what happens. So I don't think the puzzle design itself really changes much. I just think it's the player interactivity. So you can have really great puzzle designs in both and really rotten in both. So
Is there anything that you can do in one and can't do in the other?
I guess for puzzle purposes, there could be a few things. Like it's a lot easier if you are in a parser. Like, I'm thinking Quest for Glory 1, there's a gargoyle that asks you questions and you have to type in the answers. It's a lot easier to do that with point and click than with a with a parser than with a point and click, unless it like wants to pop up a keyboard for you to enter answers in, but that also gets kind of cumbersome.
Right, like it has to be multiple choice, I suppose.
Right, it would usually be like a multiple choice situation, which is fine, but I think, well, it's definitely different.
It's less rewarding.
Anybody who's taken a test knows that fill in the blank is a lot harder than multiple choice.
Right.
I feel like we're being so hard on your game throughout this whole episode, Paul. I also feel like nobody's ever out there like holding up the flag and saying parsers are awesome all the time. Like I love both, but I mean, there is just when we get into talking about it, it almost puts me back in the mind frame of what I felt like again when I was sort of determining which one I like better of the two, and when they were first coming out. It's kind of it's a complicated subject. I'm glad we're doing another episode on it.
Well, I think that parser point and click doesn't need defending. Like point and click's just gonna be fine. I think parser is the one that kind of needs a little bit of defending, and if anything, I'm a bit of a turncoat because I grew up on parser and have such an affinity for it that like I my reason for not doing a parser was solely that I assumed it would be. I knew nothing about programming, so I just assumed it would be a lot more difficult. And I was like, I don't think my first game should be a parser. That's probably going to be harder. And that was the end of that internal conversation. Just that was
right. Because you did say maybe a text game in the future, or I mean, it's not like you
still eventually,
the idea. Yeah,
no, it's still very these are the games I grew up on. I do absolutely adore them, and yeah, it's like point and clicks will be fine. They don't need anybody to like champion like why they're good or bad or whatever. Like they're going to be around. It's parsers that's like kind of the scrappy underdog that some part of me deep down like once any like LucasArts types to give them a chance, because I think they're so much fun. And um
Yeah, and the point and click is really the king, you know.
Mhm.
It's marketable, it's more marketable, and it's definitely easier to move to different consoles. Like I'm not going to be able to put
mm,
my game on a Switch. Like that's just not going to happen. It's like it has
Mhm.
to, you know, you have to have a keyboard. So it's like computer or nothing. Whereas point and click can really be kind of broadcast across platforms. Uh, so point and click
True.
is kind of the jester, you know, who's poking at the king.
right,
So
right. Like, as you're saying that, made me think you could play Betrayed Alliance like on your phone, just throw it in DOSBox, and it would probably play really good, right? Because I've played it. I think I've messed around with a few parsers on the phone, and the little
somebody had mentioned, and I don't have experience with it, but somebody had mentioned that they were playing it on their iPad with some kind of DOSBox extension, and they were
yeah.
showing it running. And I thought, well, that's really neat. So, I mean, I guess it would be. I don't think it would be fun on a phone though. Like, I just don't enjoy typing on a phone.
Right.
Like, I would find that cumbersome. And plus, like, I do use mouse controls for a certain number of puzzles in the game, and I feel like that would be really hard to do as well.
Right. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Mhm.
you're right. I agree to all those points, and it's actually ironically. And that's the wrong use of the word. Whatever. Um, shut up, me. The only thing worse than typing on a phone is typing on an iPad.
Oh
That's
yeah.
worse. I don't know. I don't know why it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But still, when we're all done here later today, I'm totally gonna put it on there and try it.
Do take a photo or something,
I
and
will. I
we
will.
can split it, put it up on the socials. That would be fun because
All right.
I mean, obviously we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about the game, and hey, in the Classic Gamers Guild, which is the group that we're connected with on Facebook, our Ladies' Night next Friday is going to be featuring your game, and we just want to get it out there. We want to tell everybody about the guide. I mean, this is all exciting stuff.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Really quick, I was just glancing at my notes from playing the game. I know I kind of derailing us back to Betrayed Alliance, but but it's also fresh in my head too. I just want to. I think I need to know if this was intentional or to just validate the joke. But am I correct in saying that Lara goes into the shower and doesn't return?
She definitely does go in the room. Actually, I don't remember if I made it so that she doesn't ever come out. Like
Yeah, because
if
I
you
waited
like
and I was
leave
like,
and
is
come
she
back
gonna?
in, but if you like leave the room and come back
Ah,
in, does she like walk back in? I don't remember.
right. I didn't try that either. But I was just sitting there, I'm like, wait, Lara never came back from the shower. She got stabbed in there. I was so excited. Such a nice touch.
I love
Like
that.
this is exactly how you do um, a game like this. You know, where like it pays respects or whatever to its origin, but it also, because Sierra was so self whatevering.
Referential.
Yeah, probably. Since Sierra was so like that already, it still actually feels like an authentic article too, because like they would have done that anyway. Yeah, so, just so well done.
Yeah. And
Um,
I hope it's at a minimum. Like I tried not to like shove it everywhere. Like I just
Mhm.
and that room is like, well, that's everywhere because it's
right.
the Easter egg room. Like it's supposed to be, you know, everything together. But like for the
Mhm.
most part, I wanted it to be a unique story with unique characters, and you know, just sprinkle in here and there a reference or two, but
The
nothing
little
that
nods.
really affects the
Mhm.
gameplay or affects the story. It just kind of touches that you run across every now and again, just to give you a little smile.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, it does. That's why I feel like it's more of a Lost Sierra game than a fan game,
Mhm.
because it's like I think the ways in which it's similar to Sierra for me is just in the charm of the writing. It's not even necessarily like exactly what the writing is. You know, it's just like the spirit of the writing. I guess you could say. I'm
Mhm.
not sure. Um, but it does make sense that you also are a writer, because that I think it's ultimately why any game is really good, is if the writing itself is good, and just there's a natural, effortless kind of vibe to a lot of the descriptors and stuff in the game. So it makes sense that you've also written books. And yeah, I saw from the geek video that you had written a book that your school didn't want you to share with the kids.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny. Um,
yeah. You know, they don't like middle schoolers reading about main characters that try to off themselves. So
Right.
that would not be
right,
something to promote. But
right, fair enough, fair enough. All right.
a little dark. It was a little dark.
Mhm.
Whoops.
Now, I see in the notes we were talking briefly about NIME verb system, and you've mentioned Slats that you were not a huge fan, and you would if you were to pick one, you would choose point and click over 9-verb. And dude,
Right,
I
yeah.
cannot agree more. I have had such a hard time with the 9-verb. I had an impossible time with Maniac Mansion with its ridiculous amount of verbs. I found it a little bit overwhelming, actually. Even though there's more options in a parser, I found the 9-verb just, it didn't keep me in the game in the same way a typical point and click or a text parser would.
I agree. Like the overwhelming thing is interesting because it does feel overwhelming, and it dominates like a lot of the screen space for where you could have nice artwork, which is something I would rather have. But like just having all 9 of them there, like with the parser, technically, yeah, you have like an infinite array of verbs you could put in, but like you're just going to type in the first one that comes to mind, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. Like it's not like, oh, I have to choose one of these. It's just I'm just going to put in what pops in my mind. So it doesn't have that sense of overwhelmingness, if that's a word. Uh, I don't know. I just scrolling down and scrolling up and scrolling down and scrolling up. It was just too tedious for me, and I know that's weird because I like the parser, and there's a certain amount of tedium that comes with typing commands and retyping commands. But I don't know.
Sorry. It's actually a talent learning how to talk to a game. I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, and I'd say, I'd bring friends over, and I'd be like, oh, well, let's play King's Quest together. And they're like, that's awesome. And they'll sit down and they'll be like, Rosella, what's her name? I'll be like, Rosella. They'll like, Rosella, pick up a flower. Rosella, walk. Like they talk to the game like they're talking to a person. Of course, the game doesn't understand. And I'm like, well, no, you have to talk to the game a certain way. And they're like, well, that's stupid. And like, just me trying to get them to enjoy or even understand how the genre works was so complicated. And then I realized, what did we do? We'd get these games, we'd open up the book, say King's Quest 4.
Right.
And you'd read through, okay, here's your list of all the words you can use. And you'd build your vocabulary and how to interact with these games from that. And it is so much more of a learning curve than you would think. But even now, like I put Jacob down in front of a text game, right? And he's just texting to it as if he's talking to Google or an AI or something, right? It's like, no, dude, you can't. It's never mind. It's not fun anymore. He leaves.
Yeah, that definitely is another reason where the parser is not necessarily as easily marketable, or it's just like your user base is going to be limited, and I'm okay with that because I'm making it for fun. I'm making it as a nostalgia thing. I'm making it just because when I found out you could do it, I'm like, well, of course I have to do it now. If do it, it'd be too fun. It's too much fun not to do.
Right.
So.
There's something to be said about parser where like my son is just showing a little signs of interest in it and I think it's because, and this is just to I guess say there's maybe a glimmer of hope with no there's not, but you can force the younger generations to like it if you really try, but is ultimately the extent of the positivity here. But the point being is that I think he finds it fascinating, and so do I, and probably all of us. But there's like this interaction with the computer that just feels good, where it's like you're inputting things in it, and it feels like a dance, and the computer is responding to what you said, even if it's a rejection. It's like you still have like an open dialogue with like a machine, and there's something really cool about that. It even harkens back to like, I don't know, like hacker scenes in movies and stuff like that. You just get this cool like satisfaction of knowing that like you and the computer are communicating with each other. And
and I've had that experience too. I had my daughter sit down and play King's Quest 4, and she loved it, and she wanted me to do most of the things for her because she was having trouble spelling and like a lot of the parsers weren't going through. But she really enjoyed that. And then my son, he didn't really like Quest for Glory that much, but he was really into Space Quest 3, and he wanted to do a lot of it himself. He would want me to help him with certain puzzles and whatnot. But yeah, I agree. It isn't a completely lost cause. The parser system isn't just for people my age.
Right.
No, it's not. My kid liked King's Quest 4, except he only wanted to play the game when he was younger from when it turned to night. So he'd say, could you put on the night game, Mummy? And I'd put it on and he'd mess around. And you know, what else can you do in parser games? Everybody wants to, right? We're going to type in all the swears. We're going to try taking off our clothes if it's Police Quest. You're going to, and I mean, and you get rewarded in a lot of the Sierra games for doing these silly things. And I mean, that is a kind of freedom that, you click the hand icon on yourself. It doesn't do the same thing. I mean, they played with it a bit with Larry, putting in tongue icons or putting in, zipper icons and things, but it just is not the same as, drop zipper, drop trow now, hug girl, just trying all the random stuff.
Right.
Right. All the pervy me younger kid stuff I would have tried immediately.
Or would try now. Yeah.
Okay, that's true. Yeah.
I know.
The fight scene sounded like it had a familiar rhythm section to it. Did that come from Space Quest?
I don't believe so. Brandon Bloom wrote the song for the battle theme, and I think he was trying to get something that felt close to the Quest for Glory fight battle theme.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but with still remaining an original composition.
It was just the beginning, that what you said, that do 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 do, because that's kind of what led into the. But then it changed and it became its own thing, right? Yeah.
Now that you say that, that does kind of sound similar to the opening of the Space Quest. Yeah. I'll have to ask him if that was intentional. I really kind of doubt it though.
Well, that's the same as the Quest for Glory at the beginning of the fights. Both of them do the same kind of marching on cadence of thing. So, he's a big fan of both of those.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is how nerdy deep dives start too, because then it's like, well, now the question is, did Quest for Glory and Space Quest use the same thing?
Yeah, that's another good. And then, and talk to me a little bit about the special Carl. Who has done your art? Has he helped with the rework? How is he involved in this whole process? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so he kind of joined me. He wanted to do some like creature designs for book 2, and that was like how he started, with helping me. And at one point, after the Kickstarter, it was like, well, book 1 remake is going to be a lot of work, and that's like because we're going to have to do almost all the artwork over again. And he offered to help me just do some backgrounds. So he did about 2/3 of the new background artworks, and I did about 1/3. And hopefully, you can't really tell which is which, but any of the buildings that look beautiful, he did. His architecture pictures are just so great, both interior and exterior. They're my favorite. They're my favorite backgrounds in the entire game.
It's true. I had a chance to see the changes because when we first talked to you and talked about the podcast, I checked out your original version of the game. That's before the redo had come through. It was really nice seeing the updates. It was so subtle and it was so pleasing.
Well, thank you.
It was really well done. Yeah, I'm glad I had the chance to try out both, because if the new one was out, I would have just jumped right to that. But I do like comparisons. So,
artwork-wise, the one note I have on here about it is you're right, the architecture, that's a great way to put it, Ryan. It's the architecture in particular that's just so authentic. Like when you see the I don't know what it would actually be called, but the cottage, with the chicken breast lady, Deborah. Is it Deborah?
Yeah, Debbie.
Sweet.
Yeah,
it's just like super authentic. But one note that I made about the artwork was that you could tell it was made by artists this time, because if you compare when you compare like Sierra era art like that, I mean, there was a lot of it that was fantastic. At the risk, I almost just accidentally shit on like all of them, and I shouldn't have. But I'm thinking more back to like AGI, like earlier King's Quest, where you still have the same limited palette, but just looking at the way that like you guys did cobblestone bricks, like in a building, where like the shading was correct, where the bricks were all individually popping out, and just little stuff like that. It was just like very drab and flat in the earlier Sierra games, and it was just it was very cool to see what somebody with artistic skill can do with with the same limited palette. Like it was just another one of those cool little reminders. But so I guess, Ryan, I think I'm just now piecing together that really you're a bit of a one-man show. Like you're doing the programming, the art, and I know you share the art with Carl. My listing skills are a little better than I just sold them for. But at least 20% of the art, and I think the original version was all your art. So you got art. You're doing some of the music, as you said, doing the programming. Which one of all of these is like your home base? Like what were you primarily? I guess I'm gonna guess a writer.
Yeah, I think probably like artist, even though my earlier artwork wasn't exactly great, but like drawing was always kind of one of my favorite things. And then kind of after I finished book 1, like the first time when I quit and I was like, I'm never going to work with this again. That's when I kind of took 6 years to start doing some like novel writing and just kind of building that. And music has always been a big thing for me too. Like I don't know, it's hard to say, and I'm surprised how much I enjoy programming, because that's the hardest part for me.
Same.
But like when you get down and you get to these points where it's like, man, how am I going to achieve this thing? And then you you sort it out and you implement it and it works. And I'm like, wow, that feels really good. So
Yeah.
it's kind of all enjoyable. Obviously, being able to do different things at different times is really nice, because sometimes you get burned out on
Yes.
drawing backgrounds or animations. Like, man, I just want to do some programming for a little bit, or I just want to do some music. Although I don't do much of the music anymore.
Right.
That's
Because
all.
you haven't.
That's all quite like cathartic to hear. So I guess you're probably like me. Like it doesn't really matter what you're creating as long as you're creating. And if you're not creating, you get a little sad, probably.
Oh, that's it. That's exactly right. You identified my personality type perfectly. If I'm
Right.
not creating something, I get creative depression.
Yeah.
I knew you guys would get along so well. I mean, not that Paul needed to be convinced. He's like, this is going to be awesome. I'm like, I know.
I was trying to explain to Anna the other day. She's like, you don't miss. It was before I started doing the soundtrack. And she's like, you don't miss making music, because I did that the most before doing the game. And I was like, no, because I'm very stimulated. I get to do the art, and then as you said with the programming, I had no idea how much creativity it required. I thought it was just all logic, and yeah, I didn't know that. Like, I don't know about you, but the first time I opened up for you SCI Zero or SCI Companion, and for me AGS, I didn't realize like how just in the middle of the desert you were going to be. I'm just like, oh, I have to do like everything. Like
There's
like,
nothing here, man.
Right, yeah.
and like finding that first if statement was like a breakthrough. I'm like, okay, so this is how it's gonna write. We just pick a thing to decide what to do with and build from it. But it's just like, yeah, you're just kind of in the desert with like a stick, and it's like we have to build a game with this. Like it's just a flashing
Right.
cursor. So yeah,
People aren't going to like this, but like the only reason there's a sliding block puzzle in the game is because I just wanted to see if I could make a sliding block puzzle. I was like, well, I already made it, so I may as well.
Even you gave everybody the out. If they didn't want to do the puzzle, you had there was I learned after secret ways to get through it or things you can look up. I really like the way that you've actually designed your game to be on different difficulty levels, because sometimes as a casual player, you're like, I don't really want to put that kind of effort in. I want to follow the story and play the game, but also you have the ability to say, nope, no help. I'm going to get right in here and I'm going to do it. I really respect that.
Yeah, exactly. Now that I've made this sliding block puzzle, let's make a way to skip it, because we don't want to do that.
It's true. I've made it. You guys don't have to.
I made it. I don't want to play it. Jeez.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I have one thing in my game that is the same idea, where I just wanted to show myself. I wanted to cross off a checklist that not every puzzle was going to be like dialogue or inventory. I'm like, I want one like GUI based puzzle where the mouse turns into a different thing because you picked it up, and just for that kind of challenge. So okay, I hate to go back to the nerdy route, but I'm really curious how hard was the sailboat extreme? Was that the whole time I'm playing it, I'm just wondering how this was, like how to even you would begin programming something like that. Like, did it take a really long time? What was your overall?
Man, I made that so long ago. It's hard to say, because that's probably got to be like mostly 15-year-old programming at this point. It was like one of the earlier things I made, and then obviously I updated it a lot, and I've added some features. So now you can like blow up ships, and you check your heart meter, and there's more visuals that go along with it. But I mean, it is really just basically you're just moving an what do you call it, like a boat. You're just moving a visual up and down the screen, and then checking whether or not it's getting close to other items. So it's not particularly complicated. Otherwise I wouldn't have made it. So there's some things you want to run into, there's some things you don't want to run into.
Right, so you're running like collision checks,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, man.
Is this item within 30, or maybe probably 20 pixels of this item?
Oh, okay, right. It's just like a little greater lesson on like the X or Y. Or
exactly.
Okay, thank you. Now I can at least, like imagine how it was. Okay, cool. That's satisfying. Possibly at the cost of everybody listening. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, I'm really proud of the sailboat extreme, because it's I like the artwork in it. I
love
like
it.
When you're moving up and down, you can see the controller moving up and down on the screen.
So
it's just those small touches I really appreciate now.
I like it. It takes me like Toonstruck. I loved playing arcade games, and I mean, I know you haven't really played much in the way of point and click here, but Toonstruck had an arcade. I like any game. Space Quest, any one of those that has an arcade game. I always find that fun. So yeah, I didn't want to go and use the solve it quickly, solution right away. I really wanted to get in and play the game. I thought it was fun. Like, well done. Like,
It was really
whole
fun.
industries were made on creating a game like that and then getting it in
Right,
an arcade
yeah.
box and putting it in an arcade. And that is the game. So to put a game in a game, to me, like, kudos,
Right.
dude.
Yeah. Yeah, during the Pac-Man days, that would have been a big hit. Sailboat Extreme.
Hell yeah.
Right.
I remember playing Tubin, so that one was pretty radical. I don't know. Did either of you play that? You're on this like tube in the water, an inner tube, and you got to go down all these rapids. And every time you did something good, it would say tubular, and every time you sucked, it would be like, oh.
That sounds so familiar, but I don't remember a game called that. But
No, I'm so old.
Does sound really familiar though. You're right.
Mhm.
All right. Yeah, actually, on the silver thing, I got off in my kid's face last night, like football fan style. I'm like, first try, Daddy got it in the first try. And he's just like, got what? Please stop. I was so proud of that because I had the hint book open next to me, and I was like, it was really preparing me to not to either struggle with it or to because it's a hint book, that's its job, is to to tell you how to do it, and that you'll be fine. But I was like, okay, this is probably going to take a few tries, and because then you even have like a fail safe. There we go. Man, I wanted to say it again. My brain I think I just had a tiny stroke. You have a fail safe built in. So I'm like, right away just thinking, assuming that like you guys, I'm like, I think I'm bad at these kind of games, so surely I won't do this in the first try. And it was exactly 150. Like, so I tied him technically,
nice.
But it lets me win. But I was so proud of that. Like, so proud of that.
Mhm.
Disproportionately proud of that little success. But then I was just thinking how much fun it was. I'm like, man, it's almost a shame that like
that you got the high score that quickly.
Right, yeah, exactly. And it's almost a shame that it's like this little like side like optional thing in an adventure game. I'm like, man, like there's probably a timeline where this is like a hit arcade game in 1987. Like, have me thinking that like along those lines too, where like it crosses like all the boxes or whatever to be like a fun little arcade game. Like, man.
Well, and again,
Mhm.
Brendan Bloom's music really helps. Liven it up. It's got that beautiful sounds like chiptune, and he just did a great job making it sound great.
Yeah, he killed it. It all comes together. It's clearly done by somebody who like values writing and things like that, which sometimes is lacking in adventure games. Just
Mhm.
especially in the indie scene. I think in defense of them, it's just like a lot of people who are really good at programming and they want to make an adventure game, or they're really good at graphic art, so they want to make an adventure game. And it's like we don't always. It's ironically just kind of like back in the day with Sierra. Like you're not necessarily playing games coming from people who understand writing and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
as weird as that is for the narrative genre, it's just the way it is. Like I think it took Sierra till like Gabriel Knight 1 to hire like a real writer. I guess maybe Christy Marks before that. But anyway, I extremely digress. But I'll use that as a terrible clunky transition into who is y'all's icons. As far as I basically like, I just want everybody to pick like the peak parser, the peak representation of a great parser game, and the same for point and click. Obviously, with a personal flair to it.
Right. I'll go first, as to not force the guest to have to make an immediate decision. But to me, peak parser is King's Quest IV, and I know there was even a few little nods in the game, shovels and digging and things to King's Quest IV. But it was my first. It is my favorite. I have continued to play it at least once a year, every year since I got it. So I'm in my 40s now, so I've been playing it for a really long time. I really like the way that you can interact with the text parser. It's not as funny as, say, Police Quest or some of the other games that made me laugh, but it was so straightforward that me at the age of 9 was able to take just the instruction booklet and the game and complete it with nothing else. No hint books, no help, just my dad saying, hey, maybe you should go for a walk and think about the problem because you look kind of frustrated. So like that's the perfect text game to me right there. And on the point and click side, as far as games have come out, my ideal, and I can't even tell you how many times I brought this up, but it does tie in with the nostalgia. I really like Space Quest 4. I like the graphics. I like the interactions. I liked the ability we had to figure out hotspots without it being a big mystery, because like Space Quest 6, everything was a hotspot, but it was so cluttered and there was so much going on that it's almost almost overwhelming. I feel like there was just so much to click on. So yeah, the hand painted art graphic style, the pacing of the game, and the point and click, and the ability for me to interact with it is definitely the Space Quest 4, which leads me into that drop down menu, Paul, and like you're using that now with your game. I like the drop down menu. We've talked about in the past, people right click to cycle and then they end up cycling too far, and Paul will see all of us do it when we're doing our play testing. And he's even like, okay, we went on a hunt to figure out the mystery ages ago, and it was like, the mystery is when you have nothing in your inventory, you have this many clicks. But when you're holding your inventory, you have one more click. So you're always trying to like figure out where the rotation goes. Is it after 5 clicks or is it after 6 clicks? And so you're constantly kind of confused as to how many clicks you need. So we thought, well, by eliminating that, you're always having the inventory in your hand. The click cycle always stays the same. And I thought, well, maybe that'll stop people from over-clicking on the click cycle, but I still do over-click on the click cycle.
It stopped nothing. Essentially.
It stopped nothing, but it was a fun discussion.
I was super proud of the implementation of it, where it's like, so what Anna's describing, it's like the one of the icons, if you have no active inventory, so you're not, hadn't recently selected something or picked something up, you have no active inventory, the icon is the fanny pack. And it's just like Anna said, it's just to keep the amount of clicks consistent the whole game. Like, it's always going to be, I never actually counted, maybe 4 clicks from eyeball to eyeball, or whatever it is. And then the fanny pack has to do something, so you can click it anywhere on the screen to just pull up your inventory quickly. So I was really proud of that, and I really thought it was going to, stop a lot of the missing your target and cycling back through a second time, but it doesn't. Watching the play tests of people, and it's just... It's like
a great idea. I'm sorry that it didn't work.
Thanks.
It is better, though. I do cycle through less. Like, I am less confused. Even though, Paul, I get excited and I miss my mark, it actually is better. And I don't know how to describe it other than when I'm playing it, I can tell the difference, that it's always the same. And then I'm not like, oh, man, stupid game, I don't know how many clicks it is. It's more like, oh, Anna, quit rushing. It's just 2 clicks over, girl.
Right. There is like a franticness about it from everybody too. That's funny to put it that way. Yeah.
All right, I'm done my turn. Somebody else has to go next now, unless you want me to start making up stories for you guys.
Well,
I mean, I will. Quest for Glory 1 is in competition with King's Quest 4 in the amazing way they used the parser and made the game funny and everything else. And I also replay it every year. And there's so much to it. And now that I've thought about my own answer, I think the two of them are fighting head to head right now, but they are a little bit different.
Quest for Glory 1 is my go-to. The parser works really well, first of all. And then just the ability to right-click on things to look at them just makes it so much better. Because sometimes when you're in a parser game, you see the pixels on the screen, but you don't really know what it's supposed to be. What does that represent? So if you can right-click to look on items like that, that helps so much, because then you don't have to obviously type it in or like go on a guessing hunt to figure out, well, what is that representing? So that helps a lot with the parser. And Quest for Glory 1, really taught me to ask about. So it's not just talk to a man or a woman or whatever, but you can actually follow them up with questions. And I don't blame King's Quest 4 for not doing that. I think it was the first SCI game.
And it didn't have ask about.
Right. And so it didn't have all of those, those later features. But that's why I would put Quest for Glory 1.
Good call.
When I started playing Betrayed Alliance, and right off the bat, it tells you that you can do that. Because one, I thought I had no idea, right? Because I don't Quest for Glory, so I didn't know that was in that as well. So I was just like, oh, that's innovative and different and blah blah blah. And I really thought, as soon as I read that in your game, I was like, oh, well, that's how I'm gonna be doing it. And it wasn't. It was actually like, now that you're saying it, I was thinking back, and I ended up sticking to typing look. But again, I do have that proclivity for text parsers and grew up on them, and I could see I just kind of got sucked into playing it that way. But it is interesting. I think. Almost like generously speaking, on a psychological angle, because I was offered the easier option and I didn't take it, and that might have just been out of habit from playing parsers. I don't know. It's all kind of interesting.
And a lot of times when you're playing a parser game, both of your hands are on the computer, and then like the thought of just like moving your hand to the mouse isn't forefront in your mind. It's
right.
Like, well, my hand's already here. I'm just going to type in look. It takes half of a second. So
Right, that's a great call. That alone could have been it. That combined with like playing a parser is like slipping into an old pair of whatever's
Oh
for me.
yeah.
So you know, so it's like once you kind of already get into that mind frame of like, okay, now we're doing a parser. Like, yeah. But it was very cool. It was very very cool to have, and I like how you put it there, where it's like sometimes the parsers you don't know exactly what it is, and that's a great way to get around that.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah, I agree. I did like the right clicking. I right click on everything. That's kind of my intro to every room that I go in a game like yours, Slats, is I'm just going to right click on every object that I can see so that I can figure out what I can work with. So that's kind of like first I'll type look, and then I'll right click on everything in the room afterwards. But I like the dynamic with the marble. I mean, you had me dropping the marbles everywhere. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put them down here. I'm going to put them down here. Every room, what can I find? Because you don't always know you're going to find something randomly. I thought that was a really neat dynamic.
Yeah, it was a cool mechanic.
Thank you.
Ryan, would you have like a peak point and click?
That's tough for me because I don't play them a lot. So Broken Age is the one that I finished. So
Right, by default.
by default,
There
it
you
must
go.
be crowned the winner. But I liked the first half of that a lot better than the second half.
I feel that way about a lot of games,
Yeah,
point and click games. I have the big box for that one, but it's not opened yet, so I haven't actually played it yet.
I was really excited about it, and I love the way it ended because it was actually released in two halves. So I love the first half, and then the second half, I don't know, didn't do it for me as much. I mean, I finished it, but I don't know. Tough call for me. Sorry. I wish I could have a more, well-studied answer, we'll say.
No, I like that. I like a good default answer, and also I don't think we've ever even said Broken Age on this podcast in 6 years and 200 episodes. So it's kind of nice it just got brought up for a minute. We'll see it again in 6 more years.
Yeah, it'll come back. I think everything comes back around eventually.
Broken Age 2. Yeah, let's go.
My picks are Anna, you said Space Quest 4, and I was gonna pick that, I think, because it's
It's a good one, man.
It's parser E. You got the lick. You've got like additional options that one might click into a parser just for jokes, and I think just for that alone, that it gives you more than just look, touch, and whatever walk. So yeah, I was trying to think of one I don't know, I could be recalcitrant and pick Space Quest 5 just to be slightly different, but then 4 did it first and whatever. And Gabriel Knight is my example of one that just totally missed the mark. Like they saw, and you got to admire the ambition. Like they saw the potential of this new point and click thing, and they're like, let's give them like 15 different things they could do at different times, and then a quarter of the way through development, we're just going to forget that we even had some of those and not use them at all.
Exactly what they did. Oh my goodness.
Which is similar to honestly what Lucas did with a lot. Like once they got from 9 to 12 verbs, they would just like, I think there's 1 or 2 of the verbs that get used like once in a game, almost in oh shit, we haven't used this all game. We better really force it here. Which is a terrible call, because if anything, then the players get really used to never needing it, and that becomes why you got stuck on something. But anyway, I
did the same thing in my game. Like, I wish I had come up with more ways to use the ruler. Like, you use the ruler once, and there's no other place where you can use it, even for fun. And I look back at that and think, that's a missed opportunity. I could have been measuring all kinds of stuff for fun. Oh, well.
It was funny.
Go ahead.
I have similar, like I had to really force a bunch of uses into one of my inventory items because you're going to have it so many times. And it made me realize for the next games, let's say, I didn't realize, like, if you're gonna let the player keep something, they're gonna constantly check on it, and I really just didn't realize that at first. That was like a lack of experience part on my behalf. My ruler, let's say, where it's just like, shit, if you let them just have the thing, then they're always gonna figure there's a use for it at some point. So I didn't know that.
It's interesting the way people play games. I was thinking about like the 9 verb and how I found it difficult. And then I thought about a game like Spellcasting 101, where you literally have a list with like 20 verbs, and then you have a list of every single thing in the room. And the game itself is static with words on it. So you're like essentially mixing drop, chair, or examine, or take, or read, or part, open, close. What else did they have? Get, push, look, wait. And again, apply. And I found a game like that to be even more overwhelming than LucasArts or anything else. But it's another hybrid. It's not a typing game. It's not a point and click game. It is an adventure game. It is funny, but you just throw all those words in front of the screen for me to click on, and I don't even know what to do. I'd rather click on each individual item in the room, but how am I going to see, like, in this one screen, ale, art section, a bip, a chair, a cigarette pack, cloak, crate, editorial sections, Gretchen, kegs, news sections, notebook, partiers. It's like, oh my goodness, like how does that even come together? And so when I look at games like yours, Slats, or yours, Paul, in this modern age, there is absolutely no way that we are going backwards, and we are only going forwards with these methods of gameplay, and it is continuing to get better. And I'm really excited to see this resurgence over the last 10 years of all of my favorite games coming back new and improved, and so much less frustrating than the originals that we know and love.
Yeah, here. And it was,
Thank you for saying that.
spellcasting that's like the Mac Venture games, yeah, like
Yes,
Deja
kinda
Vu,
like that.
and right, okay,
Yeah.
right. It's almost like parsers if you didn't have a keyboard or something. Yeah, like why did
Right.
Interesting.
It's not easy.
Yeah, that sounds pretty rough.
Yeah.
It is. I admire somebody like Stu. Stu has a channel on Facebook. It's Stu's Reviews, and he goes through and he plays all of these amazingly hard games, including these ones, all the way through, man. And he does such a good job. Very admirable.
It's like too much on the menu kind of thing. Like
It is.
that's why In-N-Out Burger was always good. Like you got three choices here.
There you
go. Or like
man, I wish
Lenny
we
at the pretzel stand. Like,
All right. So is there anything else anybody wants to bring up before I start reading off things?
No, but in case anybody tunes out or just mentally tunes out because of the ending thing, which, fair enough. Let's, Ryan, you want to do like any pitches, websites, where can they find it, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just thanks to both of you for playing the game. Games are made to be played, and like if I'd make it anyway if nobody played it, just because it's fun to make. But if you want to play it, it is free. You can go to slatstudio.com, and you'll find a link to download it for free. You get it from my GitHub, so it's not like on Steam or anything like that. It's free and open source, so I just kind of put it up there. So feel free to get it from there. And if you want to support me, I have a Patreon. You could buy the hint book. You could buy like shirts, or if you just want to enjoy and play a game, just go at it.
Beautiful. I'll link that in the description too for listeners too. So just go there and click on the thing.
Yeah, please do. And outside of that, I want to take a minute to say thank you to our amazing Patreoners in the True Believer tier. Yes, that's right. I've changed the name. In fact, I've changed the name of all the tiers because I didn't like them. So thanks for being a true believer to all of you wonderful $10 subscribers. And that would be Gareth, Michael, J. Holmes, Brian Manown, and Tim Ellis. You guys, I really appreciate all of you and everybody else that makes the show possible. I also put in a middle tier at $5 in case $10 was too much and $1 was too little. You can jump right in the middle, and there's a few extra benefits just for being there as well. So outside of that, check us out. We are a part of the Hotspot Network, the adventure game Hotspot Network that will be showing up in July in Tacoma for the inaugural Adventure Game Hotspot Awards, and as well just getting together, having some booths, having some games, and just an amazing weekend of entertainment. You can find Paula and I. We are a page and a group on Facebook at the Classic Gamers Guild. You can find us on Twitter at CGG Podcast or Paul at the Phantom Fellows. What did I say? I said the email, mail at classicgamersguild.com. We've got the Patreon. We've got the Facebook. Oh, right. We also have an Instagram and a YouTube. There is even one video on YouTube that has Paul and I on video, although it's been a while since then.
Please
so
stop
don't
telling
watch
people
it.
that.
It's got like 100 more views than anything else. What can I say? But no, we were not our best during that episode. When we do it again, we will do better. You're up, Paul, please.
Damn it. All right. Well, look, listen, the fanfare thing is linked below. Adventure Game Hotspot Fanfare. There's a link in the description. I said below, but it's not YouTube. You'd have to like open your phone And look, I'm not going to make it sound like work. Just that's there for you. All right. There's links there. It's all fine. Fanfare is happening in Washington. We'll be there. I know I said all that. I don't know why I'm saying it again, but I did. And then just don't do a murder. It's that simple. Just 12 hours of corn. Okay, right. So I'm gonna jump us back in at asking about the music during the fight scene. It's always so weird trying to be all artificial and like say it again, you know. So Ryan, here's an off the cuff question for you.
That we've never asked before.